האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dober V'yetzer. We are in the Zera Shimshon. We have a double parsha this week, Parshios Matos and Masei. We're going to do a section from the second parsha, the last parsha in our Sefer, Parshas Masei. And we're going to do Oz Zion, section number 7. Before we begin, there are two things we need to do. One, first we need to look at two psukim that the Zera Shimshon refers to right from the start. And then number two, we're going to have to discuss for a moment why the Zera Shimshon talks about these psukim, which are not in our parsha. They're not in Parshas Masei, and there's no clear connection to our parsha. So let's do first things first. Here come the psukim. This is from Sefer Devarim, Parshas Re'eh, Perek Yudalid, psukim Chaf Aleph and Chaf Beis. And if, when you hear these psukim, you're wondering, what does that have to do with Parshas Masei? That's the next question coming up. Lo sochlu chol nevela, do not eat any animal that dies on its own. Lager asher bisharecha titnena va'achala, give it to the stranger in your gates and he will eat it. O machor lenochri, or sell it to a non-Jew. That's what you can do with this nevela. Of course, an animal that dies by itself, that doesn't have shlita, that doesn't have a kosher slaughtering, is obviously not kosher. Ki am kadosh atol Hashem Elokecha, because you are a holy nation to Hashem your God. Lo sevashel gedi bachalev imo, do not cook a kid, a baby goat, and the milk of its mother. That's Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Pasuk Chaf Beis. Aser te'aser eis kol tivuas zarecha. You should surely tithe. You should surely give a tenth of all of the produce of your planting. Hayotze hasodeh shana shana, that comes out of the field year after year. So just to give a little bit of a reasoning as to what's happening with these two psukim, the Zera Shimshon is going to bring in Rashi to explain why the Torah put next to each other, juxtaposed, a pasuk about not eating nevela that ends with the words lo sevashel gedi, the famous "do not cook a baby goat in its mother's milk." Why do those words come right before the next pasuk of aser ta'aser? You should surely give meiser, you should surely take a tithe each year. And what we know of as meiser rishon, the first tenth that you take from your produce, is given to a Levi, is given to Levium. And then there's meiser sheni, the second meiser. There's meiser ani, meiser that goes to poor. There's all different types of meiser. But for our purposes right now, those two psukim, that's the issue that's going to come up with those two psukim. But we have to ask a much bigger question, a much more fundamental question. Why does the Zera Shimshon bring in psukim from Parshas Re'eh and never doesn't explain the connection to our Parshas Masei? So the suggestion has been made that what's going on here is that in our parsha, it does talk about the Levium. Shevet Levi is highlighted in our parsha because there are a whole bunch of cities that the Torah commands the people when they come into Eretz Yisrael to designate these cities for the Levium to live in. And because of that strong connection to Shevet Levi and these special cities that are going to be designated for the Levium to live in, there's a connection to Meiser, to all of the Jewish people helping to support the Levium by giving them a tithe, a tenth of their produce. After all, if the Levium have these designated cities to live in, that means that they're not going to be farmers who can go out and find the best farmland and develop big farms and grow crops the same way other people can do of the other tribes. They need to live in their designated cities, and that leads us to that helps us understand there's a mitzvah of meiser, of giving them a tenth of our produce. And so that's what the Zera Shimshon is going to discuss in this section. Okay, Drush Zion, section number 7, right into the Zera Shimshon pasuk. The pasuk says, "Aser ta aser," you should surely tithe. The pasuk we read a moment ago. Perush Rashi. Rashi explains on that pasuk. Usamichle, and the Torah put right directly before those words, "Lo sevai shel gedi." Do not cook a baby goat in its mother's milk. Ma inyan zeh etzel zeh. So Rashi asked the question. What is the connection between not cooking a baby goat in its mother's milk and then leading right into the words of you should surely tithe, you should give a tenth of your produce to the Levium? What's the connection? Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. This was Hashem's way of saying to the Jewish people, Al tigramu li, we're moving to the top of the column on the left, do not cause me, levashel gidoyim shel tvua, to cook the baby goats of the grain, basically the babies of the grain. In other words, the grain when it's young. Don't cause me to cook it. Ad shehein b'me'ei imoseihen, while the grain, the kernels of grain, are still in the inside of their mother, meaning in the inside of the plant. What is this saying? She'im einatem me'asrin masos karaoi. This means if you don't fulfill the mitzvah of Meiser properly and give the gifts of the tenth of your produce to the Levium and handle all of the laws of Meiseros properly, if you don't do that, shehu samach lehispashel, when the grain is close to ripening, which is the time when you're supposed to do the mitzvah of Meiser. Ani motzi ruach kadim, I will bring forth an east wind. Moving to the next page on the right, umishadaftan, and I will blast the grain. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'chule, etc. Here, the Zera Shimshon cut off a pasuk that talks about grain that gets blasted while it's still in its husks, and so the idea is that the two psukim, Rashi's teaching us that these two psukim are put together, they're juxtaposed one to another because it's a way of Hashem sending a message. Don't cook a baby goat in its mother's milk, and that's what you shouldn't do. And what you should do is fulfill all of the laws, the halachas of Meiser, of tithing properly, because if you don't do that, then Hashem is saying, I will cook the baby grains, meaning cook in a bad sense. I will blast them with a wind, such hot wind that they'll become unusable, they'll rot while they are still in the stalks. You won't have the chance to harvest them and eat them if you don't give Meiser, if you don't follow the laws of tithing and giving a tenth of your produce to the Levium and do the other mitzvos that apply to Meiser. Continuing, v'tzorech iyun, we need to analyze, lama dafka zeha onesh, why is there a very particular punishment being mentioned, sheyiyu noladim haperos, that the fruit, in this case grain, will be born, meaning the grain will start to develop. V'acher kach mishadef osam, and afterwards Hashem says, I'll blast the grain. Not only that, but the time is given of blasting the grain, meaning of hitting it with these hot winds that will destroy it, specifically right before it ripens. Why? Why wouldn't Hashem, if he really wanted to threaten a punishment, say, I'm not going to, from the beginning, your fields will not grow produce, you won't have grain. K'moshe Omer b'makam acher, as the Torah says in a different place, v'ha'adama lo sitein es yevula, the earth will not give forth its produce. So there's a double-edged sword, a two-part question here. We need to make sure we understand both parts of the question because the Zera Shimshon is going to answer those questions as he develops his ideas here. So let's make sure we understand. Very, very straightforward pair of questions. According to Rashi in Parshas Re'eh, on these two psukim that we began with, that the Zera Shimshon opens with, Hashem is saying, if you don't do Meiser, I'm going to come and destroy your grain after it has started to grow, before it has fully ripened. So the Zera Shimshon's first question is, why not just make it so the fields, make the punishment simpler than that? Let the fields not grow grain at all. That will be an even bigger punishment. And number two, if Hashem has decided no, for some reason he's going to let the grain develop, why does he specifically say, I'm going to blast it before it has fully ripened? Why is there any significance to that specific time period? So those are the two questions. Why blast the grain after it is developed, as opposed to just letting no grain develop? Let that be the punishment. And if you're going to blast it before it's fully ripened, why specifically right before it fully ripens? Why not do it earlier? Okay, two questions. Let's continue. And we can say, Shekvar Yodua, it is already known, Sheschar HaMaiser Hu HaBracha, the reward for properly following the mitzvos of Maiser is the blessing Shesholeach Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Batvuo Shelo, the blessing that Hashem sends to a person regarding that person's produce. This is a well-known idea that if a person is careful about giving Meiser and doing all the proper things with their produce in terms of tithing, then the reward is the blessings Hashem will send to their produce. Kimosha Amru Zichronom Levracha, as the Chazal say in a famous statement, you can see it's in Masech the Shabbos, Aser bishvil shetit asher. Give a tenth of your produce in order that you should become wealthy. This is, of course, a play on the similarity between aser, taking a tenth, and ashir, wealth. So do Meiser in order to become wealthy. The bracha of giving Meiser, the reward, the schar, is that a person's produce and crops will grow, fully successfully, and the person will become wealthy. There'll be a bracha in their produce and their crops, and they'll become wealthy through that, of course, assuming that they handle all of the laws of maisros, of giving tithes. Ve'od ksiv, and there's another pasuk that reflects this idea from Malachi. Uvechanuni na bazos, test me now with this. V'harikosi lachem bracha ad belidai. Test me with the handling Meiser the way it's supposed to be handled. Test me to see if I'll reward you, and I will pour out for you blessings ad belidai, until there is no end. So again, we see that Hashem blesses people who handle the mitzvah of Meiser correctly. Ugemiri, and we learn she'ein habracha shora al davar reik. Blessing cannot come and dwell, cannot stay on something empty. K'moshe kosav bazohar, as it's written in the Zohar, al pasuk, on the pasuk, hagidi li ma yesh loch babayis. This is a pasuk, as you can see from Sefer Malachim, and this is a famous story, a famous anecdote of the Navi Elisha Hanavi. He was talking to a woman who was very poor, extremely destitute, and he wanted to help her. And he said to her, "Tell me, what is it that you have in the house?" She was able to produce this little container of oil. And he said, "Very good. It's good that you have that. Start pouring go to your neighbors and get all the containers and pots and everything you can that can hold oil. Then come back and you're going to pour from this container, and it's going to fill all of the pots, and it won't stop. It'll just keep going and going and going." So the Zohar comments on that story, if the woman did not have that little bit of oil, lo hoyus shora aleha habracha, then this miracle of the oil and this blessing of the oil continuing to pour and pour and pour wouldn't have happened. She needed to have something in order for the miracle and the brachos and the blessing of the oil to fill all of these pots and pans and containers for that to happen. If she had nothing, then the bracha couldn't have come. And that's this idea that blessings cannot come on something that doesn't exist at all. You have to have a modicum. You have to have something for the bracha to kind of take hold of and multiply it and grow and expand. If there's absolutely nothing, then the bracha cannot begin, cannot take hold. Imkei, next paragraph, if so, kishaha'adam eino ma'aser koroi, if a person doesn't do the mitzvah of Meiser properly, hadinhu, the law is, sheyochul alav haklala, then a curse will come, God forbid, hefech habracha, in the opposite way that the blessing would have come. Ve'im ha'aretz lo hayusa motzia klum, therefore, if the punishment to a person for not bringing maasros properly is that their land doesn't grow anything at all, it just is completely barren and doesn't grow any produce, lo hoyasa nikeres haklola haboa, it wouldn't be recognizable that the curse that is coming, the punishment that comes to this person, machmas hamaisros, is because he neglected the mitzvah of maisros. That wouldn't be clear if his field didn't grow anything. V'lochein, and therefore, lasos heker, shebolo zeh machmas avon hamaiser, in order to make it clearly be recognizable that the punishment is coming to the person specifically because he or she did not handle the mitzvah of meiser properly. HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh sheha'aretz totzi peroseha. Hashem makes it that the person's land, in fact, does bring forth produce. V'achar kach shora alehem haklala, and then the curse, the punishment comes and rests upon what did grow. V'holchim le'ibud, and what did grow becomes unusable. It goes to waste. So the Zera Shimshon is articulating a very subtle idea here and an important idea, and that is that Hashem wants it to be clear that the punishment that's coming to this person is because he didn't bring maisros correctly. And how does Hashem demonstrate that? Because in order for the bracha, the blessing to come when you do maisros correctly, when you handle maisros correctly, the produce has to be present, and then Hashem blesses it. So here the opposite happens. The produce is present, and then Hashem destroys it, and holchim le'ibud, and the produce goes to waste and can't be used. And that's why Hashem chose to say what's going to happen if you don't handle maisros correctly is not that you won't have produce. You will have produce, but it won't be usable. It won't come to full term, so to speak. It won't fully ripen and be able to be harvested. So that answers the first of our double question that we started with. The second question was, okay, fine, so something has to be there, but why does Hashem say the punishment will only come right before it's fully ripened? That's coming up now, next paragraph. V'hatam she'oseh, and the reason that Hashem does this meaning destroys the grain that's already grown, kishehem krovim lehispashel dafka, specifically when the grain is close to being fully ripened. Why is that the time for this east wind to come and destroy it? Yesh lomar, we can say shekosvu hamikubalim, the Kabbalists wrote, shekol pri ve'esev yesh lo malach. Every fruit and blade of grass has a malach, shemakehu, who strikes it, continuing to the top of the next column on the left. Ve'omer lo gedal, and the malach says to the fruit or the blade of grass, grow. Meaning the hashgacha pratis, the divine providence, the involvement of Hashem in the heavenly sphere and what happens on earth, comes all the way down to an individual blade of grass that won't grow unless a malach says grow, and a specific fruit won't grow unless a malach hits it and tells it to grow. Uvigemar bishulo, and when a fruit completely ripens, nisharbo nitzos shel oso hamalach, a little spark of the malach that promoted its growth remains, and that nitzos, that spark, enters the fruit, so to speak, at the time of it being fully ripened. V'ha'ochlo nishmaso nenes, and a person who eats a fully ripened fruit, his neshama benefits. Not only does the person physically enjoy and benefit from the ripe fruit, but his neshama benefits because of this nitzotz from the malach, this spark that the malach kind of injected at the time when the fruit was fully ripened. The oso malach nizon, and that malach is sustained because people eat the fruit, and their neshamas benefit from that interaction, that eating of the fully ripened fruit. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Mikubalim. V'lochein, and therefore, kedei shelo yelech leibud hanitzot shel hamalach, in order not to cause to go to waste this spark from the malach, eno mamtin lahashchisam, Hashem doesn't wait to destroy the crop of grain achar shenigbar bishulam, after the grain is fully ripe, elakishehem krovim lehispashel. Rather, Hashem does it. He brings the hot winds to destroy the grain for the person who doesn't bring maisros. When? Just before the grain is fully ripened. V'hainu gedoyim b'mei moseihen, and that's why Rashi used the very unusual language to refer to the grain, that Hashem will destroy the grain when it is like baby kids, baby goats in the innards and the wombs of their mothers. That's the reference to these grains which are almost fully ripened, but they're still inside of the mother, meaning they're inside of their husks and they're not yet ready to be harvested. So that's why that answers the second part of the two-part question we started with. Why does Hashem wait until the grains are almost ripened before destroying them? Answer: if Hashem waited until they were fully ripened, then that would be too late, because then the nitzotz of the malach would be present, and Hashem doesn't want to destroy these precious sparks of the malachim, so he does it before that happens. Of course, you could then go back to the first question, well, why not just do it from the very beginning? Well, that was the answer we had. Hashem wants to make it clear that what he's doing here, this punishment, is intended to demonstrate that the person didn't handle maisros correctly, and that's why the punishment was took place when it took place, after the grains had ripened partially, but not fully. Next paragraph. With this idea, we will be able to explain in a logical and a nice way lama batochecho shel kisavo, why in the admonitions of Parshas Kisavo, pered hakosov shlosha mine peros be'inyan haklala. Why did the Torah specifically mention 3 types of fruit or 3 types of produce when it talked about curses that will come to a person if, God forbid, the people don't follow the Torah and the mitzvahs of Hashem? Why did the Torah mention 3 specific types of produce? And now the Zera Shimshon is going to show us the 3 types. Zera Rav Totzi Hasadeh. So one pasuk says, you will bring out lots of seed to plant in your field. That's referring to grain like wheat and barley. You'll bring out seeds and you'll plant them, and you'll try to grow. You'll bring out a lot of seed, but you won't be able to harvest it because when it grows, the locusts will come and eat it. That's what the Torah says. Kromim tita, and then the Torah says you're going to plant vineyards, but you're not going to successfully be able to bring in the grapes from your vineyard and benefit from them, because they'll become wormy out in the field and they'll be unusable. Zeisim yiyu lecha, and then the third thing the Torah says is you'll have olives. Your olive trees will be full of olives, v'chule, but then you won't be able to harvest them because before harvest time comes, the olives will drop off the tree. They'll become diseased and they'll drop off the trees. So the Torah uses three examples: grain, grapes, and olives, to talk about the klala, the curse that'll come to the people if, God forbid, they don't follow the Torah and the mitzvah. So the Zera Shimshon is asking, why mention those three specifically? V'halo ha'yochol lomar derech klal, and could not the Torah have just said in a general way, Peiros yeh lecha v'lo tochlem, you'll have fruit and you will not be able to eat them? Why didn't the Torah just make a general statement like that, as opposed to mentioning grain and grapes and olives? Ela lefi she'ein chayovim b'maisros. The answer is that a person is not obligated from the Torah to bring meiser, to bring tithes, ela elu shlosha minim, except from produce that is similar to these three types: dagon, tirosh, v'yitzhar, grain, wine, and olive oil. So just to explain that for a moment, what that means is that maisros applies to different types of produce, but not every kind of produce. For example, something has to be planted for human consumption, just like grain is planted for humans to eat, and grapes are planted for wine and grape juice and eating grapes, and olives are planted to enjoy the olives, for people to eat the olives, and also for to use the olive oil. So those three things have in common the tzad hashava. One of the tzad hashava is one of the common denominators of those three types of produce is that they're planted for human consumption. That's what they're for. And so too, that applies to the laws of maisros. So let's say a person goes out and plants something only for animals to eat, not for humans to eat, for fodder, in other words. So if a person plants that type of fodder, then there's no mitzvah from the Torah to bring maisros to tithe that type of produce. So that's why the Torah mentions these three examples of grain and wine and oil in the klalos and the curses, as we'll see as we continue. Rotza lahodia hakosuv, it's because the Torah wants to make known shaha'onesh hazeh, this punishment of a person's grain and wine and grapes and olives all going bad, this punishment, bolo davka machmos avon hamaiser, it's specifically coming because of the sins involved in not handling maisros correctly. She'im hayamafrish hamaisros, if people would separate maisros and tithe their produce correctly, adarabba, then just the opposite, hayabolo habracha, then blessings would come to the farmers for that. Kedichsiv, as the pasuk says that the Zera Shimshon quoted previously, "V'harikosi lachem bracha ad belidai," and I will pour out for you blessings when you do handle maisros correctly. I will pour out for you blessings without stop. Uva emes, next paragraph, and in truth, shezeh haloshon shel belidai, this language of without enough. Ka'amre Chazal say about it, Perush, that the explanation of those words is, Ad sheyivlu sifso sechem. Chazal say, what exactly does it mean until there will be no enough? It means that your lips will become tired of saying enough. You'll be so blessed that you'll be thanking Hashem and you'll be saying, die, it's Hashem, you've blessed me so much, it's enough, and your lips will become worn out, will become tired and fatigued from saying it so many times. That's how much Hashem will be blessing you and pouring blessings out upon you. V'od yesh lomar, and there's something else, another way we can understand these words of blessings ad belidai until, again, literally now, until you are without enough, which almost sounds like a negative, but obviously it's a blessing. So what does it mean? Ad belidai. Sheyodua, it is known, shehamikatrigim einehem tzora b'tovas ha'olam. The heavenly accusers, their eyes are miserly when it comes to the good that is being done in this world. So there are heavenly protectors and heavenly accusers, and the heavenly accusers don't really like it when brachos, blessings, are being poured out in this world, material blessings. They don't like it. And when Hashem wants to pour down blessings and extend good things to a person, they always accuse, make accusations, in order to prevent that good from reaching the person completely. Or at the very least, these heavenly accusers try to make it so that Hashem reduces and limits the blessings that he wants to give the person. V'tamid omrim, and they always say, "Dai pachos mizeh." Enough, give less than this. When Hashem wants to bless a person, these heavenly accusers say, no, it's enough. You don't have to give them so much. Pachos mizeh, they can do fine. It's enough to give them even less than you want to give them, Hashem. But when Hashem sends his blessings to a person, he guards it and protects his blessings from these heavenly accusers. Kumosha Amru, as Chazal said, on our blessing from the Birchas Kohanim, from the blessings that the Kohanim bless the people, Yivarechecha Hashem, Hashem will bless you. So Chazal say, B'momon. That means Hashem will bless you with financial prosperity. V'yishmerecha, and Hashem will guard you. Min hamazikin, from these mekatrigim, from these heavenly accusers. So that shows us that the blessings fit really well together. Hashem is saying, the Kohanim are saying, Hashem will bless you with prosperity, with financial prosperity, with wealth. V'yishmerecha, but Hashem knows he's going to need to guard you from the mekatrigim, from the heavenly accusers who are going to try and limit your blessings, your material blessings. V'zehu ad belidai, and this is another way to interpret the words, until there is no enough. Sheyishlach lachem bracha, Hashem will send you blessings, be'inyan, in such a way, sheyistom pihem shalom mekatrigim, he will close the mouths of the accusers, shelo yihiyu yecholim lomar dai, they will not be able to say enough. That's what it means, ad belidai, beli shum dai. It means Hashem will bless you so much that there won't be any mention of the word die. There won't be any limitation from these mekatrigim, from these heavenly accusers. And of course, may it be Hashem's will that he chooses and he wants, and we're fitting to receive brachos ad belidai, blessings without end, without stop, and that nothing will be able to prevent that from happening. Yasher koch for joining in the Zera Shimshon this week. We look forward, with Hashem's help, to learning again together in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha.